Love is one of the most powerful forces in the world. It has the ability to uplift, to inspire, to bring meaning to life. But just as it can build, it can also destroy. When love is given to the wrong person, when it is not returned, or when it is taken for granted, it can leave a person shattered beyond recognition. The very thing that was supposed to bring joy can instead bring pain, and what was meant to heal can become the deepest wound. Think about it. How many people have lost themselves in love? How many have given everything, time, energy, emotions, only to be left with nothing? There are countless stories of individuals who were once confident, independent, and full of life, only to be drained by the weight of love gone wrong. They put their hearts in the hands of another, believing in promises, believing in forever, only to watch those promises break like fragile glass. When love is one-sided or toxic, it doesn't just hurt. It consumes. It takes over thoughts, affects decisions, and controls emotions. It turns strong men and women into shadows of who they used to be. One moment, they are thriving, and the next, they are stuck in endless cycles of doubt, pain, and emotional exhaustion. They start questioning themselves. What did I do wrong? Why wasn't I enough? These are the thoughts that plague someone who has given their love freely, only to have it thrown away. And let's not forget how love can blind. People in toxic relationships often can't see the damage being done to them. They stay because of memories. They stay because of hope. They convince themselves that things will get better, that the person they love will change. But love alone doesn't change people. Choices do. And when someone chooses to treat you poorly, to disrespect you, to make you feel small, love cannot fix that. The dark side of love isn't just about heartbreak. It's about the emotional scars that linger long after the relationship ends. It's about the trust that gets broken, the self-worth that gets diminished, and the fear that love will only ever bring pain. Some people never recover fully. They carry the weight of their past relationships into their future, afraid to love again. Love again. Love can also make people compromise who they are. They start bending over backward to please someone else, neglecting their own dreams and aspirations. They become a version of themselves that isn't authentic, all in an attempt to keep love alive. But real love should never require losing yourself. If being with someone means sacrificing your happiness, your goals, and your sense of self, then that isn't love, it's self-destruction. And then there's the reality that not all love is meant to last. Society teaches people to hold on to love no matter what, to fight for it at all costs. But sometimes, the best thing you can do is walk away. Love should not be an anchor that holds you down. It should not be a cage that traps you. If love is causing more pain than happiness, if it's making you feel weak instead of strong, then it's time to let it go. People fear being alone, but what they should really fear is being with the wrong person. The wrong person will drain you. They will make you question your worth. They will turn love into a battlefield, where every day feels like a fight for attention, respect, or basic kindness. That is not love. That is suffering disguised as affection. The truth is, love should not destroy you. It should not break your spirit or make you feel like you are not enough. But when given to the wrong person, love can do all of that and more. It can leave you doubting yourself, losing yourself, and forgetting your own worth. And that is the dark side of love that nobody warns you about. This is why self-love must always come first. Before giving your heart to someone else, you must make sure it is whole. You must know your value, your worth, and what you deserve. Because when you do, you won't settle for love that hurts. You won't chase people who don't appreciate you. You won't allow yourself to be destroyed by something that was meant to make you stronger. Love can be beautiful, but it can also be the very thing that breaks you. And until you recognize the difference between love that builds and love that destroys, you are better off alone. From the moment people are born, society teaches them that love is something they must find in another person. Movies, books, and social expectations all push the idea that happiness comes from being in a relationship, from having someone to share life with. The idea that another person will complete you has been repeated so often that many people grow up believing they are not whole on their own. But this is one of the biggest lies ever told. The truth is, you are already complete. You do not need another person to validate your worth, to give you a sense of purpose, or to make you feel like your life is meaningful. Everything you need is already within you. Many people spend years chasing love, thinking that once they find the right partner, their life will suddenly become perfect. They believe that love will fill whatever emptiness they feel inside. But love from another person is not a cure for loneliness, nor is it a guarantee of happiness. If someone is not happy within themselves, no relationship will ever be enough to fix that. True fulfillment does not come from being with someone else. It comes from knowing yourself, accepting yourself, and embracing your own journey. People who believe they are incomplete without love often make the mistake of settling for relationships that do not truly serve them. They fear being alone so much that they accept less than they deserve. They tolerate disrespect, they overlook red flags, and they pour all their energy into making a relationship work, even when it is hurting them. They convince themselves that having someone, anyone, is better than being alone. But in doing this, they lose sight of their own value. They forget that their happiness should never be dependent on another person. When someone truly understands that they are already complete, their entire perspective on love changes. Instead of searching for someone to fill a void, they focus on building a life that is already full. They invest in themselves, in their passions, in their growth. They find joy in their own company, in their own success, in the things that bring them personal fulfillment. They do not wait for love to make them happy because they have already created happiness for themselves. Being complete within yourself does not mean you will never want love or companionship. It simply means that love is a choice, not a necessity. It means that when love comes, it is a bonus to an already fulfilling life, not the foundation of it. People who know their worth do not beg for love. They do not chase after people who do not appreciate them, and they do not stay in relationships that drain them. They understand that love should add to their life, not take away from it. One of the biggest benefits of knowing you are complete on your own is that it allows you to set higher standards. When you do not believe you need another person to feel whole, you do not settle for anyone who treats you less than you deserve. You are not afraid to walk away from toxic relationships because you know that being alone is far better than being with the wrong person. You do not lower your expectations or tolerate mistreatment because you are not desperate for love. You are already fulfilled within yourself. There is a certain power that comes with self-sufficiency. When you are emotionally independent, when you find joy and purpose in your own existence, you become unstoppable. You do not rely on anyone else to determine your happiness. You do not let the absence of love make you feel empty, and you do not let the presence of love define your worth. You stand strong in who you are, knowing that you are enough just as you are. People who build their lives around relationships often find themselves lost when those relationships end. They pour all of themselves into another person, and when that person leaves, they feel like they have nothing left. This is why it is so important to cultivate a sense of self outside of love. Your identity should never be tied to a relationship. Your happiness should never be in the hands of another person. When you understand this, breakups do not destroy you. Loneliness does not scare you, because you know that, with or without love, you are still whole. The strongest, happiest people are the ones who have learned to love themselves first. They are the ones who do not look for validation in a partner, who do not measure their worth by their relationship status. They are the ones who understand that being single is not a failure, and being in a relationship is not a requirement for a meaningful life. They know that their own self-love is the foundation upon which everything else is built. At the end of the day, love should never be something you need in order to feel complete. It should be something you choose to experience, something that adds to your already fulfilling life. You are not missing a piece of yourself, you are not incomplete, and you do not need another person to make you whole. Everything you are searching for, happiness, fulfillment, love, is already inside you. And when you realize that, you stop settling for anything less than you deserve. Society often portrays being alone as something negative, something to be feared or avoided. From a young age, people are taught that happiness is found in companionship, that success is measured by relationships, and that being single is somehow a sign of failure. But the truth is, being alone is not a weakness. It is a strength. It is in solitude that people discover who they truly are, build their resilience, and gain the power to shape their own lives. Being alone does not mean being lonely. It means having the freedom to live on your own terms, without relying on anyone else for validation or happiness. One of the greatest advantages of being alone is self-discovery. When a person is constantly in relationships or surrounded by others, they often adopt the expectations, desires, and opinions of those around them. They mold themselves to fit into a relationship, sometimes sacrificing their own dreams and passions to accommodate someone else's needs. But when a person is alone, they have the opportunity to truly understand themselves. They can explore their own interests, set their own goals, and define their own identity without outside influence. This kind of self-awareness is powerful because it allows a person to move through life with confidence, knowing exactly who they are and what they want. Another benefit of solitude is emotional independence. Many people fall into the trap of believing that they need someone else to be happy. They depend on their partner for emotional support, for validation, for a sense of security. But this type of dependence is dangerous because it places control of one's happiness in someone else's hands. When a person learns to be alone, they also learn how to manage their own emotions, to find comfort in themselves rather than another person. They become self-sufficient, able to face life's challenges without relying on someone else to make them feel whole. Whole. This kind of strength is invaluable as it ensures that no matter what happens in relationships, a person will always be okay on their own. Being alone also provides a person with the space to grow. Relationships, especially unhealthy ones, can be limiting. They can hold a person back, keep them stuck in a cycle of compromise, or distract them from their personal ambitions. When a person is alone, they have the time and energy to invest in themselves. They can focus on career goals, personal development, and creative passions without having to worry about how their choices will affect someone else. They can take risks, make bold decisions, and push themselves toward success without fear of judgment or restriction. Another reason solitude is powerful is that it allows a person to build higher standards. People who are afraid of being alone often settle for relationships that do not serve them. They tolerate mistreatment, cling to toxic connections, and stay in situations that make them unhappy simply because they do not want to be by themselves. But when a person is comfortable being alone, they do not settle. They are not desperate for companionship, so they do not accept less than they deserve. They know their worth and they wait for relationships that genuinely add value to their lives, rather than ones that drain them. Being alone also leads to peace of mind. Relationships can be emotionally exhausting, especially when they are filled with conflict, insecurity, or constant compromise. Many people stay in unhappy relationships because they are afraid of the alternative. But what they fail to realize is that solitude offers something that unhealthy love never can: peace. When a person is alone, there is no drama, no betrayal, no constant battle for attention or respect. There is only clarity, stability, and the ability to move through life without unnecessary stress. Additionally, choosing to be alone allows a person to attract better relationships in the future. When someone is not afraid of solitude, they do not enter relationships out of fear or desperation to be. Instead, they enter them from a place of strength. They are not looking for someone to complete them because they are already whole. They are not willing to accept toxic behavior because they value themselves too much. This means that when they do choose to let someone into their life, it is for the right reasons, because that person genuinely brings happiness, not because they are filling a void. People often associate being alone with loneliness, but the two are not the same. Loneliness is a feeling of emptiness, of needing connection and not having it, but solitude is a choice, a state of being that can be fulfilling and empowering. A person who embraces solitude is not lonely, they are strong. They are in control of their own life, their own emotions, and their own happiness. At the end of the day, being alone is not something to be feared. It is something to be embraced. It is in solitude that people find themselves, that they build resilience, that they learn to rely on no one but themselves. It is in being alone that a person realizes they are enough, just as they are. When someone reaches this understanding, they no longer chase love, they no longer settle for less, and they no longer fear being single. Instead, they walk through life with confidence, knowing that whether love comes or not, they are already whole. Many people hold on to the idea that any love is better than no love at all. They stay in toxic relationships because they are afraid of being alone, convincing themselves that the pain they endure is just part of what it means to love someone. But the truth is, toxic love is far worse than no love at all. A bad relationship does not just cause temporary sadness. It drains a person mentally, emotionally, and sometimes even physically. It takes away self-worth, destroys confidence, and leaves lasting scars that can take years to heal. No one deserves to be trapped in a relationship that causes more harm than happiness. Walking away from toxic love is not a loss. It is a victory. Toxic relationships come in many forms. Some involve manipulation, where one partner constantly plays mind games to maintain control. Others involve emotional neglect, where a person gives their all but receives nothing in return. There are relationships filled with dishonesty, where trust is repeatedly broken, and relationships based on insecurity, where one or both partners constantly feel anxious, afraid, or unworthy. Regardless of the form it takes, toxic love always follows the same pattern. It slowly eats away at a person's happiness and sense of self. One of the worst effects of toxic love is how it changes a person's perception of themselves. People in unhealthy relationships often start to believe they are not good enough. They question their worth, wondering why they are not appreciated, why they are not treated with kindness, why their love is not enough to make things better. They blame themselves for their partner's actions, thinking that if they were smarter, more attractive, or more patient, things would improve. But love should never make someone feel this way. Real love lifts a person up. It does not make them feel small. Another danger of toxic love is that it becomes a cycle. Many people stay in bad relationships because they cling to the good moments. They remember the times when their partner was kind, when things felt perfect, when they were happy. They convince themselves that if they just try harder, they can bring those moments back. But toxic relationships are like roller coasters. One minute things seem great, and the next, everything falls apart again. This up and down pattern keeps people trapped, always chasing the high points while suffering through the low ones. The emotional toll of toxic love is heavy. People who stay in bad relationships often feel drained, exhausted, and hopeless. They lose their energy, their enthusiasm for life, and even their ability to enjoy things they once loved. Their mental health suffers, and many experience anxiety, depression, or constant stress. Love should not make a person feel this way. Love should be a source of joy, comfort, and stability, not pain and uncertainty. One of the biggest lies people tell themselves is that leaving a toxic relationship is too hard. They think they have invested too much time, that they will not find anyone better, that things might change if they just wait a little longer. But the longer a person stays in a bad relationship, the harder it becomes to walk away. They become more attached, more dependent, and more accustomed to the pain. They lose sight of what they truly deserve, forgetting that love should feel safe, not like a battlefield. Walking away from toxic love is one of the bravest things a person can do. It requires strength to recognize that a relationship is harmful, and even more strength to leave. But choosing to walk away is choosing self-respect. It is choosing peace over chaos, happiness over suffering, and self-love over self-sacrifice. It is a statement that says, I deserve better. And everyone deserves better than a love that hurts more than it heals. Being alone is far better than being in a toxic relationship. When a person walks away from bad love, they give themselves the chance to heal, to grow, and to rebuild their confidence. They rediscover their own strength, their own worth, and their own happiness. They realize that love should never require suffering, and that the right kind of love will never make them feel unworthy. At the end of the day, no love is better than toxic love. Being single is not a failure. It is freedom. It is an opportunity to focus on oneself, to heal from past wounds, and to build a life that is fulfilling without needing someone else to complete it. The right kind of love will come in time, but until then, a person is always better off alone than with someone who does not truly value them. One of the biggest illusions people have about love is that it guarantees happiness. They believe that once they find the right person, everything in life will fall into place, and they will experience constant joy and fulfillment. But love is not a magic cure for life's problems. It does not erase insecurities, fix emotional wounds, or guarantee lasting happiness. In fact, many people who are deeply in love still find themselves feeling lost, unfulfilled, and even unhappy. Love is not enough to bring true happiness. Only inner peace and self-fulfillment can do that. The mistake many people make is placing all their hopes and expectations on a relationship. They think that once they are in love, they will no longer feel lonely, unmotivated, or dissatisfied with life. They believe that their partner will fill the gaps in their happiness, heal their emotional wounds, and make everything better. But when reality does not match these expectations, disappointment sets in. Love does not automatically fix deep-seated insecurities or past traumas. It does not replace the need for personal growth, self-love, and purpose. Many people who enter relationships hoping for happiness end up feeling more lost than ever. They might have a partner who loves them, yet they still feel empty inside. They might have affection and companionship, yet they still struggle with their own unhappiness. This is because no relationship can create happiness. It can only complement it. If a person is unhappy within themselves, even the most loving relationship will not change that. They will still struggle with the same feelings of insecurity, self-doubt, and dissatisfaction. Relying on love for happiness also places an unfair burden on a partner. No one should be responsible for another person's entire emotional well-being. A healthy relationship should be a partnership between two emotionally stable individuals, not a situation where one person depends on the other for their sense of self-worth. When a person expects their partner to make them happy, it creates pressure and strain in the relationship. It can lead to resentment, unrealistic expectations, and ultimately disappointment. True happiness comes from within. It is found in self-acceptance and personal achievements and in living a life that aligns with one's values and passions. It comes from doing things that bring joy, from setting and achieving goals, from building a life that feels meaningful. When a person focuses on their own fulfillment rather than depending on a relationship, they create a happiness that is unshakable. One that does not disappear when a relationship ends or when love is not present. Another issue with believing love equals happiness is that it often causes people to stay in the wrong relationships for too long. They convince themselves that because they love someone, they should be happy, even when the relationship is unhealthy or unfulfilling. They ignore their feelings of dissatisfaction, hoping that love will eventually make everything better. But love alone is not enough to sustain happiness. A relationship needs mutual respect, emotional support, shared values, and genuine compatibility. Without these things, love alone will not bring fulfillment. It will only create frustration and disappointment. Many people also fear that being single means being unhappy, but this is far from the truth. Some of the happiest people in the world are those who have learned to be content on their own. When a person embraces their independence, they gain the freedom to create their own happiness without relying on someone else. They can build a life filled with personal achievements, deep friendships, exciting experiences, and self-discovery. They do not need a relationship to feel whole because they have already created a fulfilling life for themselves. Love can be a beautiful and meaningful experience, but it should never be seen as the only source of happiness. It should be an addition to an already joyful and fulfilling life, not the foundation of it. When people learn to find happiness within themselves, they enter relationships from a place of strength rather than need. They do not settle for less than they deserve, and they do not stay in relationships that do not bring true fulfillment. They understand that love is not enough to make them happy, only they can do that for themselves. At the end of the day, the pursuit of happiness should not be about finding love. It should be about finding oneself. It should be about building a life that feels complete, with or without a relationship. When a person achieves this, they no longer see love as something they need, but rather as something they choose, an enhancement to an already beautiful life, not the reason for their happiness. The fear of being alone is one of the biggest reasons people stay in unfulfilling or even toxic relationships. Society has ingrained the idea that being single is something to be avoided, that a person's worth is tied to their relationship status, and that life is incomplete without romantic love. But the reality is that this fear is nothing more than an illusion, a product of conditioning that prevents people from realizing the power and freedom that come with being alone. Learning to overcome the fear of solitude is one of the most liberating things a person can do. It allows for self-discovery, emotional independence, and a life built on personal fulfillment rather than the need for validation from someone else. Many people fear being alone because they associate it with loneliness. They believe that without a partner, they will feel empty, unloved, or disconnected. But being alone and feeling lonely are not the same thing. Loneliness is an emotional state that can occur even in relationships, while being alone is simply a state of being. A person who embraces solitude understands that their own company can be just as fulfilling as being with someone else. They learn to enjoy the freedom of making their own choices, pursuing their own passions, and living life on their own terms. The fear of being alone also makes people settle for less than they deserve. They enter or remain in relationships that do not truly make them happy, simply because they believe being with someone, anyone, is better than being single. They tolerate mistreatment, lack of emotional connection, or constant dissatisfaction just to avoid facing solitude. But the truth is, a bad relationship is far worse than being alone. A toxic or unfulfilling partnership drains a person emotionally, creates unnecessary stress, and often leads to more loneliness than being single ever could. Another reason people fear being alone is that they have never truly experienced it. Many go from one relationship to another without taking the time to be by themselves. They use relationships as a distraction, a way to avoid facing their own thoughts, fears, and insecurities. But avoiding solitude means missing out on one of life's greatest opportunities, the chance to fully understand and love oneself. Being alone allows a person to reflect on their desires, dreams, and values without external influence. It provides the space to grow, to heal from past wounds, and to build an identity that is not dependent on another person. One of the most powerful aspects of overcoming the fear of being alone is realizing that self-love is the most important foundation for a happy life. When a person learns to be comfortable in their own company, they develop confidence and emotional independence. They no longer rely on a partner to make them feel valued or complete. They understand that their happiness comes from within, not from a relationship. This shift in mindset changes everything. It allows a person to enter relationships from a place of strength rather than need. They do not settle, they do not cling to unhealthy attachments, and they do not fear walking away from something that no longer serves them. Embracing solitude also opens the door to deeper connections in other areas of life. When a person stops obsessing over finding romantic love, they have more time to invest in meaningful friendships, family relationships, and personal passions. They create a life that is rich and fulfilling on its own, rather than waiting for someone else to bring them happiness. They explore their interests, travel, learn new skills, and build a life that excites them. And ironically, it is often when a person fully embraces being alone that they attract the best relationships, ones based on true compatibility rather than desperation. Another important aspect of overcoming the fear of being alone is understanding that solitude is temporary. Just because someone is single now does not mean they will be single forever. Love is not something that needs to be chased or forced. It happens naturally when the time is right. But in the meantime, there is so much more to life than relationships. A person who is afraid of being alone wastes valuable time that could be spent growing, learning, and experiencing the world. Instead of fearing solitude, they should see it as an opportunity to become the best version of themselves. At the end of the day, the fear of being alone is just that, a fear. What is it? It is not reality. It is not a reflection of a person's worth or potential for happiness. It is simply a mindset that can be changed. When a person shifts their perspective and starts to see solitude as a gift rather than a punishment, everything changes. They no longer seek love out of fear. They no longer stay in relationships that do not fulfill them, and they no longer define their worth by whether or not they are in a relationship. Instead, they embrace the freedom, strength, and self-discovery that come with being alone. And when love does come, they welcome it not because they need it, but because they choose it.